odds and ends. I'm actually here at a national park. We'll go look at it in a minute. Well, not in a minute, but in a little bit when the show's over. I hope you're all doing well. It's me, Deborah K. I've been really busy. Taking some time for myself. Like, I've even dialed back on the stuff I do on OnlyFans and other sites to work on and kind of focusing more on the rest of my life. But I did want to get another episode of Simply State Odds and Ends in. This will be episode 25 for season 5. And I do have to note, I'm going to go ahead and turn the music down so we can just talk. I got up here to this different area and somebody pointed out to me that, like, my feed for YouTube was hacked and somebody was trying to make me look like a complete weirdo even in my shorts that were appearing. So I deleted those, but I do not look like some freaking weirdo. Like, I don't look like Susan Sarandon on crack, basically. So apparently Susan Sarandon's been up here in this area and dressed up and expects people to make a big deal out of her. And reality is that pretty much everybody's like, no, you're that weird dumb bitch that UTA dropped because you're heavily in with Russia and work for them, that country. And if any of you remember who Susan Sarandon is, she's a Hollywood actress. But, not somebody that any of you would particularly care about or like, probably if you watch the show and are a fan of it. It's also just important to note that it turned out she was also actually Kay Mitchell, who worked as a nurse. And of course, in the investigations, the time when I was in Washington, D.C., it was exposed as somebody who worked for the Chinese CCP as well. So, very much, UTA actually dropped her, for those of you who are curious about industry stuff, or even, Hollywood's turned to like dinosaur stuff at this point. But, the point about her, she got dropped by UTA because they realized she was contributing actively to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the behalf of Russia and China and trying to create, fights and war over there. Nothing different than like what I described with Daniel Fry going over there, who was part of the Young Republicans in the 2010 era and starting fights. Or, some of you still remember the days of Ariel Sharon. Turned out Daniel Fry had actually gone over there and actively started fights, out Jewish people and get them to safety. And probably realized Ariel Sharon had a really hard time creating peace between the two countries because of the investments between Russia and China, and ultimately ended up in a coma and then ended up being taken off of life support. So really sad story there, but quick summary of what's going on with that. If you're in the northwestern Michigan area, I'm up in the area of Petoskey. Hi, how are you? So I'm not going to greet fans as much during the show until I get through the information on it, because it's kind of an important episode. I haven't been able to make anything in a while, just for having been sick. Unfortunately, we've been dealing with some bioterrorism up here. I need to say really quickly, this is Derby Day in the USA, 2 minutes of fun and like hours of drinking. For those of you who actually follow Derby culture, I still haven't been to the Kentucky Derby. I hope to go someday. I got my little Derby hat here on the side. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been really, really sick. But we got some criminals up here playing around with pathogens and made everybody really, really sick up in this area. And I'm going to put it in context for you. It's just literally people, we have a president that's a freaking borderline, expect everybody to give a fuck about him getting shot at, and in a country where we have a serious epidemic of recorded acts and constant gang violence, and from Russian and Chinese gangs that he's a part of and has a relationship to. And, he's never been nothing but a borderline that hung out in Al-Anon and AA. And those groups turned out to be full of people from Russia and China that were just terrorists. So what does he expect? His own people. I could totally see Pam Bondi wanting him shot after all these years. She went through all that work to become an attorney for him after being Paula Gordon back in Janesville, Wisconsin in the 90s, lost her daughter, Erin Gordon, who's an adopted daughter, trafficked the person, sold his organs, the whole thing. We've all dealt with the ridiculous stories of people trying to claim that Erin was still alive. No, Erin's definitely dead. Definitely a very promising future physical therapist that got killed in the days of neocon crap back in Janesville, Wisconsin during the Clinton era. The shooting this past week had the same exact events as the Clinton era shooting that failed back in the 90s. And, of course, failed. To say it was staged, to say it's conspiracy theory is just completely ridiculous. The guy hung out with nothing but terrorists in these 12 subgroups. And he decided to stay with them and is still in contact with them. So he has to expect, you just have to expect you're going to get shot at. Those of us who were in those groups and left have still get shot at. The Russian terrorist activity in the U.S. is out of control today. And a lot of you are probably just looking at the effects of it on your life and what's going on and saying, when are we going to get a goddamn fucking leader who actually gives a shit about this country? And if you think I'm like sort of mocking or imitating a person who spends more money on getting coverage and anchor out there, I kind of am. Because I knew her in her development. She decided to do a show where she was very similar to a woman that used to live in James, Wisconsin back in the 90s that successfully navigated a lot of this. And I'm not going to mention her name again, but she, helped me navigate some issues, getting with HHS Intel. I had a career in healthcare. I have my degree in the medical sciences. We don't need, Linda Posner. And so, we got a couple people that are actually Russian doing intel, passing stuff back and forth. I will say that pair with their show and commentating does a much better job of just passing stuff back and forth peacefully instead of being complete assholes to everyone. But, the absolute depth of people I've interviewed over the years and gone into it with just to find out what was going on with them has been completely, it's a fairly in-depth spirit of what, I don't know. But investigations over 20 years of my life, and then all the 20 years before that, I'm 45, right? Started investigations when I was a kid because I was stuck with that couple that were leaders in the old KGB of Russia. So, thank you. I'm working on getting better. It's just, look, people, before we get any more off a topic, I'm basically thank you to those of you who decided to use your media positions to be reasonable sources of information and just pass the intel along. Instead of just being complete fucking assholes. And it's really important to address this because Katie Couric has been up there and she tried to do some setup. She was posing as a medical assistant over by the Home Depot up here at Munson, and she fucked up a bunch of stuff on purpose, and they all know it. And it's being managed. But, this is the person who spent 10 years in prison. What the fuck is it doing free? And we have this weird Savannah Guthrie story, it's like, just stop. I mean, God, leave the poor old woman alone if it's even still alive. But I think those went ahead and just killed somebody to make national news and claim this older woman was taken, and it's probably one of them that killed her. Katie Couric was Sandy Keyser back in James, Wisconsin in the 90s. I'm doing, these shows are just going to move very quickly for those of you, if you don't keep your charts and your notebooks, you're not going to be able to make sense of that. But just, you have to kind of go, we have a national network of people, Chinese, you're going to Chinese CCP or Russian FSB or even the Chinese, fuckface people, and I'm just saying, the Russian GRU, it's, you've got your MMS, whatever the fuck they want to call themselves, the Chinese version of the CIA here in the U.S. And, you want me to sing a song for you right now? Maybe at the end I'll try and sing something. But what I'm saying about all this, basically, for those of you who are interested, is that, of course the president's going to get shot at. We're all getting shot at. And his circles are nothing but people that are tied in with the Russian FSB and old KGB. Of course. Of course. And nobody's going to take it seriously because he made the choices to hang out with those people. That's his life decision. That's his life path. I'm all about, if nothing, honoring people's life decisions. So that's his choice. And the rest of us need to honor it. Now, here's what you need to know, fast facts and inside information. He had a fantasy for a long time of being killed during his presidency and being big date like JFK. I'm just going to tell you right now, while I do think Nicki Minaj may be the closest thing to Marilyn Monroe you will ever see, a person that spends 5 hours putting on makeup, like Kim Kardashian does, like Cardi B does. They're Russian. I think she's probably specifically Albanian, working for the Russian government, and, not real. Sorry I drank all my Coke already, or I'd be drinking it on the show. I was just like a rapper. But, and, the reality about all of this is that, you can't hang out with people who spend 5 fucking hours putting on makeup like that and do all these weird events with them and expect to not get shot at. It's just the way life is. And the rest of us don't. We made a big point of staying away from the Hollywood crowd, and they stalk everybody, and they make people completely pissed off and crazy. And, it's just if he was expecting people to get really sympathetic or worried about him when we're all constantly afraid and constantly under fire, even in the quieter parts of this country, like I don't have a retirement because of these assholes, and I don't have a president who cares or is going to do anything about it. You know, he could put a stop to these recorded acts. He could put a stop to this. I have assholes that literally stalk me. I've been a victim of domestic violence again. Um, he could put a stop to that kind of crap. There's no goddamn reason for some weirdo to just literally be able to put in an order and hit me. And he's from Russia or China in this country. And this has happened to women across the country. And now CNN and Fox hasn't started covering it, but CNN started doing more stories on the rape epidemic in the U.S. because the issues with men using military systems either on their actual wives, people they've decided are partners, or people that a lot of you would be like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? That's even a partner. Like, you just broke into this woman's home, or worse, like, rented a unit to her, and you've decided she's your demand, and you're just going to rape and beat on her using military-grade systems? And we don't have a president who's going to address that? People, come on. Just stop. Like, we need a presidency and a leadership that's actually going to put a stop to the epidemic of violence using advanced warfare systems against women in this country. Okay, nobody's supposed to be able to do, just call Booz Allen Hamilton the Bob's Air Center and be like, go hit that bitch. I dated her once, or I saw her on the street once. I've decided she's my wife now. I'm gonna fucking hit her in the face in her own home or somebody else's home. And then worse, like put in some dumbass lawsuit against them when it's a felony? Get the fuck together. There's nobody's going to feel goddamn sorry for him when the rest of us are going through this. I don't believe that he was actually shot at. I think it was just a dumb asshole set up on behalf of his own people. Or worse, one of them just got goddamn fucking tired of listening to his stupid shithead mouth. I decided to try to shoot him. They just said, nah, you're at a party. You're not having fun tonight. You're just getting fucking shot. Or shot at. Shut the hell up. Like, I really think that's what happened. I really do. It's, you think I'm being mean, then you're not dealing with reality. You're not dealing with what's going on in this country. Because life has just become too exceedingly difficult in the U.S. It just has. I did see the news that Kamala Harris is actually not going to run again for president. Good for her. She deserves to have a life and some time for herself. She doesn't, she did more than anyone will ever do for the rest of us, honestly, on this women's issues, and for men, too, and children, because she went ahead and put in the suit against Booz Allen Hamilton, and, got the $15 million out of them for the Department of Justice, and good for her. Great woman. Let's, for Kamala Harris, that's all I'm going to say about it. But that's about it. Because, we have nothing close to that with Donald Trump as a country, and it's really hard to feel sorry for him. I can't believe he would be stupid enough to expect us to feel sorry for him when he said like a year ago that he didn't, not to worry about it if he got killed. So, but as far as being buried and stayed and loved and lauded over like JFK was, no way. Not anywhere near possible. Nope. It's not gonna happen. So, no. But anyways, I'm going to get into the rest of this episode. I do need to put another note. Kim Kardashian has been up here, so if some of you are wondering if it looks like there's some weird version of Kim Kardashian walking around with, like, no makeup on, and, like, she's got a fake teeth set in and, like, half missing on the top. She's got teeth, trust me, honey. Yeah, she's got all her teeth. Don't say anything to her. She has some really serious mental health issues, but she's also old Russian KGB. And if she's up here been trying to traffic kids and steal, and it's just not going to fucking work. I couldn't believe this week, but I was already out on a job and had to block, like, some weird setup she put in to try to steal somebody's kid. It was just really disturbing. There was a woman wandering around one of the stores with, like, 2 kids and was trying to carry a baby around. It was just impossible. And it was very obvious somebody had pulled her out of her home on a Signet system, and she was wandering around, was about to lose her baby. And I ended up actually getting her to go home and do something else with herself. So it's just, it's nothing but disturbing, but he just looks like a fucking weirdo with this stuff going on. And Melania with the weird pink. So I do have to note for you, there is a really weird trend with pink going on, the light pink. See, I've got mauve on. I don't know if I have it here. Like, this color, like ballet pink. Yeah. So, I think, I'm reminded at this point of the old story of that they kept reading back in Iowa in the 80s about the military officer and the ballerina that died together. Remember the story of the Tin Heart soldier melted together with the ballet ribbon around it? Remember that Donald Trump was around in Iowa back in the 80s? That story was popular. I saw a surge in the color like a month ago, so I didn't want to wear it at all. I mean, I might wear it at home, but I will not wear it out in public. At least not like as a shirt. You also need to remember that there was a bunch of issues with Caroline Silver is really crazy about the color, and she used to talk about girls wearing farm girl pink on top of shirts back in the 80s, and then the idea is you were supposed to be like getting married or something. I know, you're probably like, Deborah, what the fuck does this have to do with it? I'm just telling you the history of the color and the trends that are relevant to the present with what's actually going on here in the United States of America. Now, so for those of you who don't want to be associated with anything weird and Iranian, don't wear ballerina pink tops. Stay away from them. Because there's something weird with the MS-13 gangs going on with it, and I love the color some of the time, but I'd only wear it like at home, or I do something with it that just doesn't look like that. Of course, some of you do remember the previous episodes where we talked about the fact that I went over to Georgetown one day for the dumb extortion scheme, and had to go over there and confronted like Greg Thornton, who's an actual person wearing a farm girl pink sweater like Becky Thornton used to wear when she was dating him at Luther College. By the way, Becky Thornton is now John Thune. Colors, themes to stay away from right now. It's a very trendy color, but I'm like, God, I was in a muted green, and I saw the muted pink coming up. Like, I might like it in a bag, but I don't really wear it muted green. And do a little bit with it. I already have muted green around. Like, I like greens. Who doesn't? But, I think when you look at fashion trends and you think about what to avoid and how to fit in, it's really about finding yourself and knowing what you're associated with or want to be associated with. And then from there, you can just do whatever you need to. And that's really the safest way to go. Know who you are. I have this with the, Japanese blossoms, but it's, kind of the same thing, right? So, gotta know how the symbolism lines up. I'm gonna go through the rest of this. One quick thing I need to say, because I do know Kim's around, probably looking to hear on this. It was Representative Paul Ryan and a bunch of other guys from the State Department that turned you in early last year when I ran for office. And of course, you probably realize by now that your relationship to Donald Trump and the neocon factions in your Democratic or Republican Party means you're literally never going to have a chance of being elected anywhere. And too many people are aware of you as Russian FSB and also know what you actually look like without all your makeup and clothes on and costuming. So I'm not even about to saying sorry to you for that, because you've had a vast array of experiences that most people never have, and a lot of money, and you've obviously been working as a lawyer for decades and trafficked quite a few people and not been very honest with the rest of us about it. And it's way past time people knew that. So as far as having it shut down, you want to blame me? I didn't make the decision. It's actually made by people way higher up, more power and money. And that's the end of it. Gonna go through here. We'll get moving on. Hey, happy Derby Day. We're doing Derby. And then if you saw May Day yesterday, that's always a fun one. And then I need to get this really quickly. Mifepristone is about to be banned in the state of Michigan. Hopefully, I hate the idea of anyone having to use Mifepristone, but to be honest, it's something you've been able to get fairly freely in the state of Michigan. And with the amount of rape and cults up here, those both, based in Russia and Chinese groups with women getting pregnant, needing it, no, I think you definitely need to keep Mifepristone available and freely. It's actually been available freely enough that there are places you can walk in and just get one and walk out. And I hate the idea of anyone having to use it, but I just couldn't think of anything better. And I don't do the whole pro-life, pro-choice thing. That's very much a labeling and extremist opinion. The reality is that there are simply two, what I just talked about, the record acts and weird military attacks on women and children in this country. They're not being addressed or stopped. It's really important that Mifepristone be available pretty freely. The fact that we have a birth control method, pill available over the counter, is also important, at least one. So if you're really desperate and need to get some, it's there. I'm not going to get into reproductive rights. I'm not getting into labeling. I'm dealing with science and reality here on the issue. So some of the stuff I need to read, some of it may be more important for the rest of you. You know what the hell you're Jamie Rasmussen up in the Petoskey area. Apparently she is... Okay, she's too much like Carol Corey, and she still remains in contact with people at Luther College. She still wants to be noted as being Mark Shapiro's lover, and she has still been working over at Walmart, but she has had it with the number of incidents. And there was frankly a really weird incident with Meyer when she was over there dressed up as Jamie, freaking out and being really over dramatic, which I personally didn't really appreciate either. So I was over there and I was like, would you just calm the fuck down? Yes, we all saw it. Calm the fuck down. You know, I think I need to remind Jamie of the conversation she had with David Yaroslav and I, like, back 8-9 years ago. You know, and David is actually an outlaw of the Department of Justice, so you have a certain people that you need to help us turn in and deal with who have not been appropriately brought to justice, and it is important to remember that you have a deal, and its payment is due. So, and I don't mean money. You know what you gotta do with these people. So, you know, we've got some issues with Russia, being Russian GRU. Notably, for your information, your former roommate who went by the name Barb, who was actually a trans male, saw me last year and was concerned about me and was down checking on me when I was in different part of the state for a little bit, or trying to move around again because things got too crazy. But it's important to know that that person actually specifically wanted you to know that this person is actually sending you that message. And it was very hurt by you because you pretended to be her friend or his friend, and he's a trans female. Sorry, he's male, he's trans female. And you pretend to be his friend and her friend, Barb's friend, during the time at Luther College in 2002, and frankly betrayed him. So, Barb is not happy with you. That's all I'm going to say about it. Did cover Susan Sarandon. Born rumor Susan Sarandon is part of the PCUSA. Apparently is really anti-Semitic and hates Jews. And so for those of us who forget, like, I'm half Jewish, and I forget that it even matters. But for an anti-Semite, the fact that I'm partially Jewish is like a big deal every fucking day they get up. And you have to remember that they use those bizarre databases to track who's actually Jewish or not, especially coming out of Russia, where all the anti-Semitic groups come from. Just keep that in mind, because a lot of you won't even remember that you're Jewish. Like, I'm part Mizrahi Jew, and I don't remember because I don't practice Judaism hardly. My father was a Mizrahi Jew, and they're a group that they, genetically Jewish from Israel originally, not people who necessarily practice Judaism. So I don't have anything to do with religion. I don't do any kind of organized religion anymore. I don't go to church, I don't go to a mosque, I don't go to a synagogue, and I want like nothing to do with it because of the abuse I've gone through in religious organizations. I have some loose relationships with a few groups because they've been nice to me, but I don't go to services with them or anything. Not anymore. It's become too hard, and I don't think any of them would want me to put myself at risk that way anyways. It's like, who wants to have me sitting at a church service and it would put like everyone at risk? I'm like, I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Let's not do that. So, let's see, Madonna. Gotta tell you about Madonna. She did turn out to actually be the woman at the Kennedy Center. Remember when I went with the women's group for the PCA, we saw the Irish concert, like, I think it was about 2015. She was the woman at the Kennedy Center who set up the fall and then was telling me to fuck off and was yelling at me at the Kennedy Center that Jen Marshall, like, got in the face and was trying to tell her to calm down. Why is Jen Marshall so cozy with this person? Because she didn't really put her in her place. I mean, I guess she could go talk to her, but Jen Marshall actually works at the Heritage Foundation, but that was actually Madonna. So I finally put it all together now. We know Madonna's also Salma Hayek. She's the one that the DIA has been after because she keeps breaking into hospitals or hacking her way to jobs in hospitals, imaging centers, and abusing people. And she tried to do them again late 2025. She was definitely the one at the Kennedy Center. They did a bunch of setups during the Irish Christmas festival concert. So for those of you who want to know, it's definitely Madonna. I don't think I've ever been so done with a performer in my entire life, but she was the one who originally started putting all the crappy music together back in the 80s that, like, I used to have to dance around to and sing to, and Caroline Silver, Rod Silver, like, was always, so crazy about, but she was the first one to start the weird But we realize now, like, the weird neuro-linguistic programming with the kids to get them set up to be trafficked and, set up to be abused and not have decent lives. So, nope, she was the first. That's her. As far as saying, oh, she's a whore and how she dresses, she dresses however she wants. It's her participation in these bizarre, acoustic harmonic attacks, the attacks on HHS itself and the U.S. healthcare system. The fact that she'd go to the Kennedy Center and screw up. I mean, she's now going to attack, like, Irish traditional performers, shows, and ruin them for people. It's ridiculous. So now you know. And then we're going to go through, here's what Jamie Rasmussen got really in trouble for back at Luther College, and she's still been doing it, so I'm going to remind her not to fucking do it. She has a history of messing up charges or signals sent back and forth between people so that they won't get together or get married or have relationships. And to know, this is why I don't believe in using radio signals to try to set up relationships, romantic relationships or dating or other kinds, because another person can see those signals being sent and through the signet systems and then mess those up. And so she had a habit of changing them around so people wouldn't get married or date who might have actually been meant to be together. And trying to get some of these people in the cult to stop using them for that reason alone has just been impossible. Like, I'm done. I already told them how I felt about that. I don't follow those because they can be changed around and misdirected. So, but she's definitely had a history of doing that, and I think she may have done it to Barb with some people. And so there's some history there that they have not resolved. Let's, like, real talk, real people. Let's, like, do that. Let's not just talk about weird invented disassociative freaks from Russia or China that, like Kim Kardashian by the name of Alicia Carlin Oshis. Like, why don't we use these names? Have some real journalism for once here. So, Barb believes that it was actually Jamie Rasmussen's fault that Olive Cushing was killed, and that he was actually Famous James, the son of, guy who founded Famous Dave's Barbecue. I've decided to let you all know that we are no longer doing transfers of information at Dollar Tree, specifically. So there'll be no transfers of information there. I have no agreement to do that Dollar Tree. I don't think Dollar Tree particularly wants that to happen to them either. And for those of you who want to know who Barb was, it was a trans male that lived with Jamie Rasmussen from 1998-2002 range at Luther College in Iowa. It was like their first freshman year, 1999. They lived together. And Olsen dorm, and it's important to note that Jamie went on to pose as Holly at Playboy. So there's that whole issue there of Playboy and Holly planting, like, evidence against Hef and getting after him after all these years. And it's just, for any of us who ever worked for Playboy or made any money there and know how Hef actually was, it's just really disgusting. Because I was a Playboy bunny like 20 years ago. I also worked for them briefly last year until the site got hacked. I will tell you this, changing topics again. I ended up actually getting a job or another, like, part-timey thing with another site that's new. I don't make tons on it, but it's a little extra something to try to get myself better situated. But, one of the problems they shows is that I've noticed there's two people who rewatch them and want to be like, well, does she have, like, 10 sons against you? It's like, no, I don't. I'm a poor person. I have, like, the right target, and I'm kind of hard to be bothered, just like everyone else. So, the rest of us are just trying to live peacefully and have decent lives, and your obsession with anarchy in the U.S. and ruining things for everyone else is just too much. The psychopathy, the allegiance to a foreign country and their interests is just, no, just stop. Just stop. It's ridiculous. So, I also have to know that Famous Dave of Famous Dave's Barbecue, Jamie Rasmussen mostly lived with Colleen Bubba's years. That turned out to be Blake massive photoshopping and CGIing of somebody who works for Russian Blake Lively, because Colin Bob is Blake Lively. As far as saying no to covering this stuff, like, I've had a few people who was living down in the diverse areas, like, would you stop? You need to stop bothering me. And the rest of you actually have to go away. And I'm actually good money for work. And a bunch of you have time to be discovered for felonies or to leave. You could also just leave the U.S. I mean, a lot of us wouldn't say anything at all if you just fucking left. But, I don't really care if you're from Moscow or Beijing, or you just crawled out of Iowa's butthole. We just, you're gross murderers that spend time messing up the media and trying to put weird footage in. it's offensive and rude to people, and you spend a lot of time trying to, you do targeted ads like JLo turned out was doing those to me, and it's just enough. And if you're wondering how you got outed on some of this, the founder of Facebook decided when he was doing all that testimony to Congress to just tell them that they were selling ads to people and that they were getting targeted ads requests sent to some of us who've been victims. And I think Facebook's since changed some of that practice, but maybe not like entirely. Like they've stopped some of the flow to me. I don't know if they can control it entirely, even know what's happening, but that's really about the end of it. So yeah. I mean, a lot of it was that Barb is frankly fed up with the situation as well, with Jamie so grotesquely wanting to be Holly, a playboy, and it's about the same as Kim Kardashian, who I finally realized is actually male. Trying to pretend like she was a playboy person, and this is in half later years, and he has dementia, and he's struggling and scared, and there's been all these murders of models and people he knew about or even knew me. And do you see any of this in the media? That he had cared about my mom and was upset about her life, that he was upset about what happened to me, that he was like waiting on the system to get its goddamn fucking act together so that these recorded acts where these models weren't being murdered or people associated him weren't being murdered, or that his own first wife had actually had to divorce him and he never really got over it and just decided to go live on a property in some secured facility with her son, their kid, in order to get some safety and protection. It's like there has to be something more said about all of that. It's ridiculous, and what was the premise of this? It was just simply that he featured women who weren't primarily Russian or Chinese, and it was all part of this dumb project by the Kremlin to destroy U.S. media and only put Russian women in. Well, that's just dumb. It's disgusting, and it has to be addressed. And we have an American media that is full of gangbangers, like 75% gangbangers, and the rest of us are independent journalists. Or if you got 60 Minutes, it's like finally, after all these years of work, decided to get themselves together to talk about acoustic Kamar attacks as well. They did some fairly interesting interviews with the Chinese CCP over the winter. But how long has it taken them to get organized to do this? And they had to have myself, and some other people who've been victims and researchers ourselves come forward who, then they felt secure enough to be able to talk about it as well. That's happened over the past couple of years. So, keep all this in mind. That's really the point of the shows. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on with Jamie having a relationship to Home Depot and Walmart, but apparently does. To say it has bad management skills is an understatement, and lacks professionalism, bizarrely guilty of using couple signals and change them around so they can be together, which was part of the Russian project to break down relationships in society in the U.S. among people who weren't Russian and to create a slave society. So for those of us who aren't Russian or Chinese, being married to someone who's actually appropriate for us has become more difficult or impossible. There's no amount of money you can pay to actually get any of this stuff fixed. It just ends up being not even a ridiculous mess, basically. But as far as teaming up with the idea of traditional marriage, I don't know why anybody would anymore. It isn't really, somebody actually posted a picture on Facebook, just to change topics slightly again, of penis cakes. Remember, penis cakes are really popular in the 90s and 2000s for for women on the way to get bachelor parties and weddings. In fact, ironically, Erin Gordon had one, and I still remember this day, Paula Gordon, who became Pam Bondi, saying she hated it. She hated the idea of Erin getting married and being with a man and having a happy life, and it was because Paula herself is part of MS-13, but also Russian FSB, and she had taken this child and decided to traffic it, and then grew into an adult and was going to get married and have a decent life, and she just decided she wasn't having it. So she hated the penis cake, and she hated the fun of it, and the idea that this person was going to get married and have a life with someone, and went ahead and trafficked it and have it killed and sold its organs. I think, God, I wish I could go back to the days when I still thought penis cakes were fun, and it was exciting to see other people getting married, and it's just so far from the reality of what this country has turned into. It's just like, God, we can be nuts to go out and try to fun get married anymore. So, yeah. And I need to know, the one memory that keeps coming back to me is that Patrick Witzel founded Endeavor Corp, and I was like, it's called bride in like 1985. The point about a lot of it was that I was like the 100th, 200th kid he married or something and had to go to work for the company as a slave for years. And there's still a problem today. I haven't been broken down enough to quit following me around and making a mess of my life, the domestic violence that goes with it. And, whenever I try to talk to people, the fact that he said he didn't want to pay me for it or have me as an actor and said I wasn't pretty enough, people would always show up for the cults, especially the Christian ones, and say, well, you don't want to be really narcissistic and weird. And, you don't want to be vain. It's like, that is so rude to say to somebody who is literally telling you that they're being used as a slave and then they just want to move on with their life to something where they can actually get paid income and have freedom and have a decent life. That's a horrible thing to say to somebody. And this is literally why I tell people to just forget going to churches to talk about your problems. And I interviewed enough people in the synagogues and mosques know they're going through the same thing. If you're dealing with those kinds of issues, you're going to get nothing but weird program pyramid level answers back because more than likely you're actually stuck in one of those cult groups. And I call it the old cult of ISIS, but that's the point. And that's what you need to know about it. So, don't I look funny from these angles in the car? So, anyways, remember I tried to go on and do nursing and healthcare, and people from his organization, I ended up with a back injury permit from his people. Thank God I can still walk and talk and have my arms and legs, and this is all good. But you need to understand what's going on. I mean, they're trying to keep people as slaves. And we have a current intelligence director, Tulsi Gabbard, who's really like going, well, don't tell me anything they want because I'm not going to do it. Well, Gabby, if that's your name today, like, they don't want anything. They're not going to pay for it. They're just idiots from Russia and China that literally are expecting to traffic the fuck out of the rest of us for the rest of our lives and keep us as slaves. Like, they got to be, shut the fuck down. Shut the bitches down. That's all I have to say about it. Look, it's a Petoskey stone in the shape of a heart. That's really cute. Love it. So cute. So anyways, I just want to remind you somebody that Jamie has some really severe problems with reality and has gone with the name Bernice Adams, posed as a counselor in Johnstown, PA, and had a strong relationship with Cersei and Wilhelm. Which has a lot of people in the Russian FSB and Chinese CCP was always a cover for them. Of course, the PCUSA at one time lied and used to say that they gave women the rock and roll and their uteruses and got them abortions. And that was one reason a number of women who had been trafficked or prostituted would stay with the organization simply to get those. But it's important to realize that the organization tortures people and tries to keep them as victims. And that Caroline Silver worked as a pastor, Junior McGarrihan out of it, and is still at one of the churches out in Colorado. And from what I know, may even be going back and forth out to D.C. to the National Presbyterian Church. So, really dangerous cult group. I don't think I have time for anybody that thinks I'm supposed to be grateful to them because they can do a rock and roll on my uterus, and I'd rather nobody was in it in the first place, putting kids in it. I don't want your penis and your demon in me. It's not a preference for just being left the fuck alone. And so, it's another way of saying things. I wonder if this will look cuter over here. We can always change the angle. Be like, wee. Here, now you can look at me from this side. I got my t-shirt on that says can't I busy. So anyways, it's important to note that Stephen, he also worked and lived as Stephen Hogg, who falsely claimed to work at the Department of Justice and refused to allow people to have settlements who were Russian, and has put through a number of settlements for people who were of Russian ancestry in the U.S. So that's part of the scam with the fake women who are their Russian FSB or Chinese CC claiming to have been raped and receiving these massive settlements, which have turned out to be paid out by people who were from the U.S., which leading to the false idea that as a person living here in the U.S., you could receive a large settlement simply for being raped. And the reality is that all you're going to be up for is a long process of trying to get felony charges filed against the person. So, that's it. At least in the U.S. system. Right? Same thing if you get injured, like, there's definitely that's not real. And frankly, who the hell would want to go missing an arm or a leg and be injured? Like, that's not actually cool. So, the people who kind of do that stuff all need to still be put into justice and actually removed from living actively on the streets, right? Of the country. And setting those up. You remember when I first went down to DC, there was like a horrifying number of people that were actually convinced, and the 12 subgroups were hung out, that they would get a bunch of money if they were injured. And Trump himself told me that he thought it was perfectly fine for people to go through these setups to have family members murdered. Like what you've seen with Alex Preddy and Rachel Good over the winter. This is his shit. It's the CICI, Labatt, Accenture. They set those up and then collect a bunch of money after the person dies or the cop involved. Like it ends. It's people. It's systemized, legitimized murder. And it's unacceptable. It's gross, and frankly, presenting it to the public is disgusting. Yeah. So, um, for me and for the rest of us, we've made a lot of efforts and focus on not being the kind of people they'd be interested in targeting. And a lot of that for you personally, who need to be reminded, is literally not going to these protest events. Yeah, and you're just having a different lifestyle. I still remember now that it was actually, I realized unfortunately it was actually Thune himself years ago posing as Jordan Anderson that didn't want me going out dancing anymore. And frankly, your current Secretary of Transportation didn't want to either. And by that, I mean, literally didn't want me going to clubs and dancing because it got people too excited. Like, I had problems with Patrick Woods himself stalking me in my 20s when I was trying to go out with my friends and just live my life. So, a lot of lifestyle choices, just to get out of situations where that kind of stuff could happen and, think about what you need to do for yourself. But the first one I would recommend is definitely, think about colors and choices of clothing you wear. Ballerina pink, not a good idea for a top right now. Um, when do protests, public protests? That's about it. But, let's see. Yeah, we need to talk about this because there's been some stuff that's come back that remind me of the setups with John Lee Malvo. It had like a minute. There was a stream coming through up here. 2002 shootings. Members of MS-13 set that up at the Home Depot down in Arlington, Virginia. That would actually be outside of Arlington, Virginia, and Falls Church. Hugely racist and hateful towards Hispanics and actually black people. And it's important to know that the Lutheran ELC and PCUA, which are Russian FSB and Chinese CC groups called fire churches and also related to issues with Iran, they sent the signals to John Lee Malvo and got him radicalized to start shooting people around. And Caroline Silver, who runs Silver like the Funds Endeavor Corp and has been a part of Endeavor for like 20, 30 years, actually set those up. Along with Fatina, who got Charlie Kirk killed in the fall. It's like this thing with the recorded acts and sending radio signals to people and radicalizing them and abusing them to get them to carry out bizarre acts has just got to stop. And it's this thing with not prosecuting the individual sending them has got to stop. Just simply has to be brought an end to. And unfortunately, you have a current president whose Gary Bavino is Doug Fleming. Well, Doug would totally try and shoot the president and his wife. And Doug's been obsessed with doing a video with Melania. Oh, hi, Gabby. You want to know something the Russian government wants or Russia and China want? Is they'd really like a video, like the stuff that I and other women have been through, where Melania Trump gets tortured and beaten up and killed, or just tortured and raped really nastily for everyone to watch. Yeah, they'd really like one. They've been after one for a long time. And your current president has gone way out of his way to avoid having that happen to him, his wife, or now Ivanka Trump. And what I'm telling you is you're not going to be able to avoid that. It's costing you something to continue to try to avoid it. Especially since he's gone ahead and told some U.S. citizens to just put up with that and go through that themselves. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to get out of it. I think the shootings and the weird threats are going to continue because of the people he surrounded himself with. And the fact that he even subscribes to the ideology himself. How can you sit there and say it's acceptable for that to happen to U.S. citizens, but not you and your wife when the main target is actually trying to be her? Melania, right? So, the issue's not going away. But I think it's only going to get worse. But that's the crux of it. If Gabby needs something to say that they want, that's pretty clearly what they want. Need to know. So, what needs to be done? Well, I've stated the obvious. Stated the obvious of who needs to be arrested and put away. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's very easy. So, I'm going to talk about Representative Ilhan Omar for a moment. Bizarre accounting error that she claimed discount like a few weeks ago and then got lost in sort of the news cycle. She's from Minnesota. She's a Democrat, although maybe not a very popular one anymore. I certainly don't respect her, but I don't respect her based on the personal experience I had of living in the Washington, D.C. area, of her taking up with that doctor's husband and then trying to live parasitically off of this U.S. doctor. and refusing to allow him to get the divorce. And they just kept taking money and taking money and extorting money from this poor U.S. doctor. And she had to go through a number of weird steps to get rid of him. This is Omar's current husband. So as far as her Irish statement saying she had like millions or claiming it was an error, no, Omar's been involved in a number of labor trafficking schemes and extorted a lot of money from people in order to become who she is. And she's clearly been getting away with it. And, what, assets of 6 to 30 million? Yeah. And, she now claims this is all wrong. This was after the US government pushed her to, she's being asked to turn in select documents to a U.S. House investigation process, running the House. Yeah, so and she's trying to get out of it. It's like, well, the reality, she's not going to have good documentation for any of this. It's just the reality. You have to have known what's happened, and you actually have to deal with the eyewitness accounts from like thousands or even hundreds of people who've dealt with her. And you know about this in the Washington, D.C. area. That's all it really is. I needed to remind you again that, the IRS is not actually that stupid, and if they saw this and realized they would know if it was an error. She's currently being brought, if they could see that I was being trafficked and all those millions were being taken from me, and Omar might be one of the ones who benefited along with Donald Trump, as he certainly did, through Endeavor Corp, because she's one of their people, she comes out of the Russian faction of Endeavor Corp, then, it's real, people. She's a trafficker and, what do you want to call her, embezzler, fraud, now guilty of larceny, perjury, there's not a lot to say about it. She's openly expressed a hatred for this country, but in the reality of it, when you think about who's involved, it's always Donald Trump and his current wife. So, the neocons are never honest, and there's too many of them, frankly, in power at this point, at least in the legislative body of Congress and also in the presidency. It's just where you're at. It's a country in the U.S. So, it's important to know that Lori Chavez de Rimer has been investigated in internal misconduct at the Department of Labor, and Keith Sonderling will serving as acting secretary. That happened 4/20, 2026. 8 p.m. estimated time, Eastern Standard Time, resignation. Great, because there was definitely something the fuck wrong with that one. There was way too many weirdos. There's been some definite changes recently. There were some really weird streams coming through. And, good on the Department of Labor itself for recognizing that, because there are two people there that had known about my stories and others that didn't want to see people in this country go back to getting labor trafficked again. I bizarrely dealt with even Jamie Rasmussen herself years ago saying, "What do you think you do YouTube and all sorts of labor trafficking?" I'm like, probably not if it's something I do as a part of my ontological purposes and for fun, but it's also led to some money-making projects for me. And frankly, it's been a way to address policy issues and what needs to be done in the U.S. I'm considered a viable source of information. I'm actually a published researcher and writer, and a very well-liked one by people who actually care about human rights in this country. And that's not your right to be an asshole to people. It's just literally I have my own international coalition. What we agree on is very small. What we agree on is that you do not have the right to put hoop systems on people and rape them and traffic them and ask them to work for free as slaves. And that's really it. So, good on the Department of Labor for getting her out of there. Watch it with the next one. But there was definitely something really seriously wrong for more than a bit here. The whole neocon surge, going back to all neocon practices. And when I look at Donald Trump, I just see another weirdo that's way too close with Bill Clinton and Hillary, and that's become more than obvious over the past 6 months. So, finally, I'll note the Department of Homeland Secretary, Mark Wayne Mullen. Yeah, that's definitely the guy that went to Parker with me. Apparently, DHS is running out of money to pay employees' salaries. I can't tell, that might actually be really popular. With as much as DHS's cost and the fact that they've been really limited in what they were able to do to stop some of these people and the number of terrorists we have free in the U.S., you may end up finding that it's actually fairly popular for DHS to be shut down, frankly, and for some of these costs to be brought down as well. Considering that, Greg Bovino and Border Patrol and used the job to shootings with CACI and killed Rachel Good and Alex Preddy over the winter, it would seem maybe important to take some time to slow things down and really think about what you're actually doing with DHS. More than anyone, spent time helping to develop DHS as a victim and a witness, and I really want to see it be successful. But I also, that I'm relying on a system that tells me not to carry a gun and not to simply kill these people myself when I know more about where they're at and can find them better than The police apparently can to stop them at this point. And I'm being told to stand down and just let them hang out with their wangs out. And the most I can do is try to stop them from stealing a kid this week. Like, it's too much. I mean, if they're supposed to have that much power and that much money, I mean, they make, officers, agents make at least 70K or more a year and they have great benefits, and I'm poor and don't have any. Like, it's just, I'm stuck going back and forth on Medicaid or paying for stuff in a pocket for healthcare. Like, it's, as far as the whole weird signaling thing, also on Trump's part with going after Gretchen Whitmer and Comey, it's a red herring that was set up by the other people that don't really care about Trump getting shot at. But if you want to run in the media and what is it, 4687 or whatever, or like this means something, no, it's no, it's just fodder for memes. I need to know that Gwen Stefani has been up in the area some, that she's still actually fairly involved with, she and Blake Shelton were both at the PCUSA, as far as I know, announced that they were getting a divorce. I don't think they're really divorced. They're obviously still working together as business partners, but they're not going to be publicly linked as celebrities anymore. And I mean, they have their real life versus their personas. So just, celeb news if you care. You may not actually care. Let's see. Oh, I tried out for the Orbit contest for Playboy and looked at, honestly, all the models, and it looked like little kids and were sort of deformed, but also appeared to maybe be trans males. And they were like, no, we don't really want you in this. I'm still doing Maxim stuff for fun. I keep placing constantly in the top 10, 15, 25, which that's fun. But I'm getting nowhere with Orbit because it's literally just featuring people that look like little kids or trans males, which that's not to grip on trans males. It's just, I think we all get it. Like, Playboy's headed in a completely different direction. So, the days of half are gone. Whatever. I mean, it's just, for us, you're wondering what's going on. That's where it's at. I also need to note that I just don't know what to do with Reese Witherspoon, because that person has turned out to be a little man and sort of following people around, and I don't know what to say to it anymore because I think it's nuts. And this is the actual actress. It's an actual man. I think it's nuts. And I don't really know what to say to this person anymore. I'm not sure it's actually the problem. I just know it seems to be involved in an awful lot of stuff. So, but, this show will be continuing. And I don't think I'm going to put the hat on today just with the weather. It's actually really cold up here in Michigan. It's in the 40s. And I'll make sure I'm sure my armpit here. And thought we might take a moment. I'm out at the big Ottawa Park here. You will find the formal name of it so you can see. Take a little view of the water here on Lake Michigan because it's so lovely water. Lessons on how to do live shows and not get run over. No, it's super gorgeous. I just want the rest of you to see it if you aren't up here in Lake Michigan. I would love to be at the Kentucky Derby Day. I would actually totally love to be at, I'd love to be at Gold Cup this year even. But I wouldn't go back to hanging out with the people I used to go to those events with. And as far as the Kentucky Derby, I've never actually been to it. I just mean Gold Cup. I would not go back to going to more events with Amanda Bynes / Angelina Jolie dressed up as Laura Lieberman and having people be like, what the fuck is going on? Going on about the crazy Iranian. Like, we can skip that. By the way, it was really, really nice to see King Charles and Camilla here in the USA this week and get through their visit safe. That was very nice. At least we can do that right in this country anymore. Um, can't think of anything more sort of manic though than like 1 minute the president's getting shot at and the next there's royals from England here. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you Lake Michigan though. Um, let's walk. Let's walk out onto one of the points and see the water. It has a memorial here for the bomb 99 bombers that was started Air Force Base, S-340, bombardment squadrons. The following B-52 crew members lost from Lake Michigan, January 7th, 1971. I'm not going to read the names, but there's still reads here to honor their lives and sacrifice. So. Was founded by the Ottawa Tribe, honors their lives as well. I love it. It's all like stones and stuff. So there's like one little area like way over there that you can go and sun yourself, but you have to climb over the rocks to get to it, which I did like once last year. That was kind of fun. We have this really nice Shintoist rock sculpture here. It's a little Shintoist rock sculpture. Again, another episode soon, but probably more like a weekly basis for these. I wouldn't expect them necessarily on a daily or even thrice weekly basis. So gotta focus on other stuff. Also, Simply Yoga with her will be back on OnlyFans soon. I'm just kind of feel a little bit better first, but it'll definitely be back soon for summer. So it's coming. It's coming. Bye. Have a good one.